Welcome to this video for query monitoring in SQL Diagnostic Manager. One of IDERA's SQL Diagnostic Manager's powerful feature is the query monitoring. This feature empowers you to proactively identify, analyze, and resolve performance bottlenecks within your SQL Server databases. Query monitoring provides invaluable insight into the query behavior, resource consumption, and potential performance issues. This data-driven approach enables you to pinpoint the root causes of slow queries, optimize resource utilization, and ultimately improve the overall performance of your SQL Server environment. Okay, let's talk about how we configure the query monitor. When we go to the instance in question, right-click, go to the properties, and go to query monitor. Query monitor is independent from the collection of data that we do for all the other metrics. So you can turn on or off the query monitor. Most customers, they have it on 24/7, but you can choose to turn it off and only turn it on when you need it. There's three ways to collect the data. One is collected via trace. Another one is to collect it via extended events, which is the preferred way if you're having a newer version, 2008 or above. And there's two ways that you can collect that, either the actual query plans or the estimated query plans. So it's up to you how you want to collect that data and what works better for you. The other option is if you have 2016 and above, you can use the query store. Now with the query store, the only disadvantage is here that you're going to have to do an extra step. Got to make sure that the query store is enabled in those databases. Once you do that, then we can say, what do we want to collect here? We want to collect SQL batches, SQL statements, store procedures and triggers, and then from there, we're going to create the filters. So the filters are going to be, or the thresholds here, the duration, logical disk, CPU, and physical disk writes. By default, you're only going to have here the duration, and by default, it's going to be 5,000 milliseconds or 5 seconds. In my case, I only want to do 2,000 milliseconds. So anything that crosses above 2 seconds, I want to capture that SQL. Now, if I do any of the other ones, let's say if I do something like 2,000 milliseconds and 1,000 milliseconds for CPU, that is going to be an AND condition, meaning that I need to have both conditions here occur. So meaning if I have a SQL script that is running and it takes more than 2,000 milliseconds, but it only takes 500 milliseconds with CPU, it will not be captured because it needs to be both conditions. So it needs to be 2,000 milliseconds and 1,000 milliseconds or above with CPU. Okay. So you can do a combination here of what you want. In my case, I'm only going to do 2 seconds, anything that's longer than 2 seconds. And then when we go to advanced, we can exclude either applications, databases, or something within the SQL text. So let's say I want to exclude all of the backups and restores. So I can say anything that starts with a restore, anything that starts with a backup, or maybe an application or maybe a database. So everything that is in the master database, right? So I can put it there. And then I can click OK. And basically, I have those things that I will be excluding from the list that we're going to see here in a second. So those are the filters that we do in Query Monitor. So once it is configured, then we can go into the queries area, this submenu that we have here, and then we can start looking at all the queries that we have captured. First thing that we can do, we can select the date. So here I'm doing from October 27th until November 3rd. And then I can also do this by time period. So if I want to do something, let's say working hours only, 8 to 5 p.m., then I can do that for that time period. So if I want to do a week, only Monday through Friday, and I only want to do from 8 to 5 p.m., which is our, the working hours and normal working hours, then I can do that. Now, in the middle here, it's not that important. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but we're going to go to the bottom, which is the information that we capture. Okay, so the information that we capture here is all of the queries that we're running from the 27th until the 3rd, and in this case, 24 hours, right, from midnight to midnight. So what we see here is all the things that ran, and then we have this column right here, which is called occurrences. Okay, those are the executions. Now, that column only is present in the signature mode, which is the view that we have right now. We have two different views, signature mode and the statement mode. So the signature mode is going to bring this column here, which is called occurrences, and it's going to give you one line or one row that it will give you a summarized view, meaning this declare here from the database sales ran 481 times during this time frame. Okay, so in one row is summarizing all of the executions that we had for that query. Okay, so what we have here, it says here query number 7, and that's because we give it a name for that query. We're going to talk about that later, how we can see the query numbers. Okay, but that is basically a name or label that we're giving that query. It is a SQL batch. We can see here the SQL text from what database or in what database it's running. And then we have the average, and that's going to be the average duration. So 108 seconds, okay, or 108,000 milliseconds. 481 occurrences, average writes. And then I'm going to put all of this together. Average reads, average waits, right? Average, I can put all the averages together, CPU time, okay? And I can continue going here, putting all that information together if I wanted to. If I wanted also, I can put, let's say I want to put the application here after the database. So it's a little bit better formatted for me. The whole point is that I can see all of this information and I can sort it by whatever I want. So if I want to sort it by CPU time or by average wait time, I can do that as well. So what is this telling me here? So I'm going to go back to occurrences, and I'm going to go by the most frequent executed SQL statement. So I can see here that that is that declare, right? And then I can see that's the most executions that I had there. Now, if I look at the select count and some of the other ones, I can also see here their occurrences and their averages that are very low. And I can see the resources in red or yellow, meaning where there's a little bit more contention than the other ones, right? So right out of the bat, if I sort this by occurrences, I can see here that this one that is taking 100 seconds and it's running for almost 500 times is affecting my resources in a bigger manner than some of the other ones. Okay. So for example, this one, even though it took almost 3 million milliseconds, right, it only ran one time during that time frame. So maybe it's not something that I need to pay attention. Maybe it was something that it was a maintenance and it was taking a lot of time and maybe a lot of resources, but it only did it one time. Maybe it was off hours, right? So maybe I don't have to pay attention to that. But I do need to pay attention to maybe this one because it's running with a higher frequency. Now, when I right-click on this and I say Show Query Text, it will show me the full query text. In this case, it's going to show me the raw signature. And the raw signature is nothing more than the SQL text without the parameters. The parameters are substituted here by the pound sign. All these. And that means that basically, if I ran this almost 500 times, it was probably run with different parameters, different databases, different number of records, different, I don't know, anything else, users or whatever it's using here, but it's running with some different parameters, okay? So what I'm showing you is what I call kind of like the structure of the SQL text, or again, the raw signature. Now, if I want to see each of those 482, then I go to the statement mode. Statement mode is going to give me the exact same information. I can filter that by date, by hour, okay? And if I want to do it also by application, or I can include or exclude. So for example here, we have all of those declares now, the SQL statements here, separated now. So 481, they're all going to be here separated, okay? Now, you notice here that I'm going to have some that are not that SQL statement that declare, right? And if I go to the top, maybe there's some other ones that are not here as well. But I can do something here. I can do exclude or include. In this case, I only want to include everything that starts declare. And when I click somewhere else, it's going to do the refreshing, and it's going to give me only those that I selected here. Now, let's bring this up a little bit here. Now I can sort it here, but I don't have here the column for occurrences or executions. That is no longer here because it's not a one row summarize. Now this is each individual. Now what I want to do here, I want to sort it by duration. So remember, my average was about 100 seconds. And now I can see here that this one took 164. If I keep going down, this one 112, this one 104, and some less than 100 seconds. But on average, it was about 100, I think it was 108 seconds. Now what we can do here is we can right click, show the query text. And now we can see the full query text here, but now we include all of the parameters that were substituted by the pound sign earlier. Okay, so all of those parameters are present here. Basically, I'm showing you the SQL exactly as it was executed. Now, the advantage of this is that you can see maybe here somebody, instead of doing 100,000 records, maybe they did 1 million records. Okay, maybe that's what was affecting the SQL, okay, or the execution of the SQL. But maybe it was something else, right? Maybe it's the time. Maybe they're all the same. But maybe this here ran at, I don't know, at 3:30 p.m. and somebody was doing another report that was taking a lot of consumption on CPU, or maybe a backup, or maybe somebody was running a DBCC check DB or a defragmentation during that time, and he was competing with the resources on this. Could be many things, but now at least we have an idea of what could be causing the problem here. One more thing that we can do here with this data is that anything that in SQL Diagnostic Manager that looks like an Excel spreadsheet, it's something that we can go ahead and export to Excel. So we're exporting that to a XLS file that then we can do any analysis that we want to do in Excel and formulas or anything else that we do in Excel. Now, the other thing that you can do here is that you can group by column. So let's say I want to group something by column. In this case, it doesn't make that much sense because everything is the same declare and is by the same user. So we probably don't want to do it this way. But now, let's go back to the signature mode. And let's go back here to taking that declare. So now we can show you all of the SQL statements. And now maybe I can do it here. It might be better to do it here. So let's say I only want to see it by the type of the event type, and maybe I want to see it also by database, or let's do application first, and then maybe database last. So now when I collapse all of that, I only want to focus on SQL statements. So I have 2 events there, and I want to see the one from Management Studio and from the database AdventureWorks. So that's the only one that I'm looking at. Now I can show you the query for that specific one. Let's say I want to focus my time on SQL Batch. Okay, which one do you want to see? You want to see here, again, the one from Management Studio and AdventureWorks. So now you can view it by this way. Now, let's say I want to not do the application. I want to do it by database only. So event type, what SQL batches are running on the sales database, or what's running on the SQL DM repository. Okay, so it's a better way to analyze the data here as well. By effectively utilizing query monitoring in SQL Diagnostic Manager, you can significantly enhance the performance and reliability of your SQL Server environments. By proactively identifying and addressing performance bottlenecks, you can optimize query execution, minimize resource contention,